Presented by Listen Headlines, latest world news from trusted sources.
Washington Post World, November 14, 7:12 America, New York. Pakistan frees 20 Indian fishermen, hundreds yet in prison. A Pakistani official says the country has freed 20 Indian fishermen who spent 4 years in a prison in the port city of Karachi for violating the country's territorial waters. Washington Post World, November 14, 7:09 America, New York. Austria orders nationwide lockdown for unvaccinated. The Austrian government has ordered a nationwide lockdown for unvaccinated people to slow the fast spread of the coronavirus in the country. Washington Post World, November 14, 7 o'clock America, New York. How a Cairo bookshop beat the odds to write its own story. Detractors said Dewan bookstore was bound to fail, but it transformed Egypt's literary scene.
Time, November 14, 7 o'clock America, New York. Remote work is fine. The real thing scaring CEOs? Hybrid work. To receive weekly emails of conversations with the world's top CEOs and business decision-makers, click here. With a global community of donors who've raised over $15 billion, GoFundMe pays close attention to what helps people feel comfortable seeking assistance.
Washington Post World, November 14, 6:55 America, New York. In long-awaited move, Kuwait's emir pardons dissidents. Kuwait's emir has issued a long-awaited amnesty decree, pardoning and reducing the sentences of nearly 36 Kuwaiti dissidents in a move aimed at defusing a government standoff.
BBC News World, November 14, 6:55 America, New York. China and India must explain themselves, COP President. COP26 President Alex Sharma says Glasgow Climate Pact is historic and it keeps 1.5°C within reach.
Washington Post World, November 14, 6:46 America, New York. Rights group. Israeli settler violence tool to seize land. An Israeli rights group says Israel has been using settler violence as a major informal tool to drive Palestinians from farming and pasture lands in the occupied West Bank. RT World News, November 14, 6:43 America, New York. World's first nationwide lockdown for the unvaxxed approved. Austria will impose new curbs on the unvaccinated starting from Monday. The measure aims to ease pressure on hospitals and ICUs. Two of the hardest-hit regions, Upper Austria and Salzburg, were the first to announce they would impose a lockdown on Monday.
November 14, 6:29 America, New York. Best-selling novelist Wilbur Smith dies aged 88. The acclaimed novelist Wilbur Smith has died aged 88, according to a statement from the author's official website.
BBC News World, November 14, 6:26 America, New York. U.S. bank robber identified after decades-long hunt. Ted Conrad disappeared with $1.7 million after pulling off a bizarre heist more than 50 years ago.
November 14, 6:01 America, New York. HBCU funding under scrutiny as Howard students say they live with mold, roach and mice infestation. Jasmine Joof said she has been sick with congestion, coughing and headaches for several weeks after discovering the mold growing in her Howard University dorm caused an allergic reaction.
Washington Post World, November 14, 5:51 America, New York. Gaddafi's son announces candidacy for president of Libya. Libya's election agency says the son and one-time heir apparent of late Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi has announced his candidacy for the country's presidential elections next month.
November 14, 5:49 America, New York. Europe skiers set for emotional return. Some miss the thrill of it. Some miss breathing in crisp, pure air on a sparkling mountainside. Others yearn for a cold drink on a sun-drenched terrace, or a cozy meal by a roaring fire after a day on the slopes.
Washington Post World, November 14, 5:32 America, New York. Pope. Don't judge the poor, often victims of injustice. Pope Francis is decrying society which hurries past the poor, judges them and leaves them to their fate.
Wall Street Journal World News, November 14, 5:30 America, New York. Malaysia tries relying less on foreign workers. With COVID-19 reducing migrant labor in many countries, some governments are testing whether their economies can run with fewer foreign workers than in the past.
Washington Post World, November 14, 5:02 America New York. Queen Elizabeth II sprains back, will miss first scheduled public appearance since hospitalization. The Remembrance Sunday service was expected to be the Queen's first public appearance since spending the night in hospital last month.
November 14, 5:01 America New York, no turkey. No problem. Try a plant-based Thanksgiving menu this year. Thinking about ditching the turkey this Thanksgiving? You're not the only one. Whether you're hosting a smaller group, concerned about the rising cost of groceries, or just looking for an excuse not to roast a bird this year, there are a number of reasons to skip putting a big turkey on the table.
New York Times World News, November 14, 5 o'clock America New York. The string of ISIS attacks that killed 3 generations of one Afghan family. Over 2 weeks, the Rajabis suffered loss after loss as suicide attacks on Shiite mosques in 2 parts of the country ravaged their family. A relative of Maisam Rajabi, a 15-year-old boy killed in a mosque bombing in Kandahar, mourns inside Bibi Fatima Mosque.
CNN.com World, November 14, 5 o'clock America New York. Ecuadorian president calls crisis cabinet after prison violence leaves dozens dead. Ecuador's President Guillermo Lasso has called a crisis cabinet after at least 68 inmates were killed in prison clashes on Saturday, according to an official statement of the president's office.
Washington Post World, November 14, 5 o'clock America New York. With Earn Brew and climate funding pledges, Scotland's leader made a role for herself at COP26. Nicola Sturgeon was keen to remind people that Scotland is a semi-autonomous nation, and would like to be independent.
November 14, 5 o'clock America New York. Ecuadorian president calls crisis cabinet after prison violence leaves dozens dead. Ecuador's President Guillermo Lasso has called a crisis cabinet after at least 68 inmates were killed in prison clashes on Saturday, according to an official statement of the president's office.
New York Times World News, November 14, 4:52 America New York. Queen Elizabeth to miss remembrance service because of sprained back. The British monarch, 95, has put off multiple trips and engagements recently, and the latest cancellation has deepened anxiety about her health. She has now been out of sight since mid-October. Queen Elizabeth II in October.